What's good, everybody? My guest today is Sean Burke. He's the Chief Operating Officer at Prometric, which is a trusted global provider of secure test development and delivery solutions. Sean, welcome to the Goats of Growth Customer Conversations.
It's great to be here, Jay. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you again. So tell me a bit more about Prometric, the role that you play there, and the overall size of your organization.
Yeah, so Prometric, a lot of people ask, like, what does Prometric do? What is testing? What are assessments? So at a high level, what if you want to go into an advanced professional certification, you come into one of our centers. So if you want to become, doctors come into our facilities, attorneys, CPAs. So globally, we manage about 14,000 centers, and we have remote testing as well, just like you and I are talking today. People who want to get advanced certifications in their area of expertise come to us to be assessed by their industry, um, in which they do their specialty. So, on an annual basis, we do about 7 million assessments. So everywhere from China all the way to the West Coast of the US. So at any one time, anywhere in the world, there are people being that are either in our facility or remotely being assessed on their competencies, in the skills that they have. My role is chief operating officer. It's quite a big scale, so roughly about 2,000 people across the globe, and it's the entire commercial organization. So anything that you can think about supporting our clients, adding new clients, growing the business is all part of it, as well as that global center, that global footprint of 14,000 centers across the globe, making sure that all the candidates that are going into those facilities and all the remote tests, all that is underneath my purview. So it's a quite a big role, and it's every day something different. So it's exciting.
So let me ask you this as you smile about everything, every day, something different. When you're responsible for that side of a commercial organization, especially when it's global, there are challenges obviously that come up on a daily basis, which can make it exciting, can make it stressful, can make it all of those things. Let me ask you just from a big picture perspective. And again, customer conversations is really about me helping the people that are listening to this podcast almost walk them through a bit of a discovery in terms of where if they're talking to or engaging with the Sean Burke in the sales process and the sales cycle, where does that begin and what does that all look like? So one of the questions that I'm sure you've been asked that I'm curious about candidly that I'm sure people listening are interested in is that as the COO in this organization, what initiatives are you working on right now that will impact your business obviously in a positive way that are on your plate that need to get done, and if they don't get done, obviously there are be even more challenges.
Yeah, there's a lot, and so if I went through them all, this would be a very long podcast. But let's separate it maybe into two pieces. So first, we have our commercial efforts, and those are really around three motions. One motion is just protecting our current clients, is making sure that they're happy, making sure that their end client is a candidate that comes into our facility, and so we do more than just execute their tests for them. We're also looking at the health of their business and trying to help them be as strong and as future proof as possible. So that's a motion that we have, and I think about that quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Then the second motion that we have in the business is trying to attract new clients to join us, and in that we're really trying to keep a pulse on the ever changing needs of the marketplace and how we deliver our solutions in a way that are unique and different than everybody else in alignment with their priorities and what they want to get done. And then the third
Mm-hmm.
piece is how we help our clients grow their business. And we're in a business now where 50% of our clients are declining and 50% of our clients are growing. And so what we're trying to do is learn from each side of that and help each other, help the decliners grow and help the growers grow even faster. So that's on the commercial side. That's where I spend a lot of my time. And then on the test center piece of the business, we're going through a lot of change. In previous to 2009, previous to COVID, almost every test that we gave to the market was in a center. So people would drive to a center, they'd go through a security check, almost like TSA you would see at an airport, and they'd come into a center because it's controlled, it's the same environment, every computer's the same, it's quiet, everywhere you go in the globe, it's a similar experience, and that's the way these high stakes tests should be delivered. But once COVID hit, they had to stay at home, and now there's a lot more testing that goes on remotely, like you and I are discussing now. And so one of the biggest things that we're focused on now is balancing our clients' need for in-center testing as well as remote testing, and staying attuned to that market. And so that's kind of the fourth motion that's unique really to Prometric versus the general public.
Thank you for that. That was extremely helpful, for sure, and insightful. Let me focus on the commercial side, and then in particular, attracting new clients, right? Because I feel like, obviously, just again, given my audience, a lot of them are trying to do that. In particular, maybe they want Prometric as a client, right? As a new customer. So talk to me about how technology is enabling your sales team or your go-to-market team to attract new customers, to attract new clients now. And again, without being specific around vendors, where are the gaps? Where do you feel that the technology is not optimized or doing enough for you that it wish it could be doing more?
Yeah, so the technology we deploy is really about, so if you think about acquiring a new client, first of all, you need to know who you're going after. And so, we buy lists, we buy contact information, and we have a marketing team and an SDR team that does all of the outreach. And all of that, in a lot of cases, we use automation for those type of things. We use sales intelligence for those type of things. And so I think, as part of your tech stack, you need to be able to smartly go after the market in and of itself. Then within a sales process, once they become engaged, we obviously have a CRM that we use to track our performance across all, our team. We use a recording software to see how we're doing in the call. And for me, when I think about technology, I really look at it in two different sides of a coin. I look at it as, how do we run an efficient sales play? Meaning that it's and it's changed a lot in the last couple of years. Is we're seeing a large number of our clients take a lot longer to make a decision, and so we feel like part of our responsibility is to help them walk through that process as efficiently as possible, because they get tired of when you think about, and all of our sales are enterprise sales. So these are not, $10,000, $15,000 deals. We're roughly a $400 million client. We have, or a company, and we roughly have around 400 clients. So you just think, in general terms, every one of our clients is around a million, but we have some that are massively larger than that. So these are long sales cycle. And what we're really trying to do is to try to help them on the first side run an efficient decision-making process. And we'll even bring in clients that have been through it to help them learn from the process that we ran from them, because it's challenging. And then the second piece that we look at is, how do we run an effective sales campaign, meaning that we win or we get a fast no, like that. That's also another piece of it. So when I look at sales technology in the process, those are two things that I look at. And then on top all of that, because I have a board of directors that I meet with every single month, and I have a senior leadership team that I am responsible for, what I try to get within our sales tack is data that tells me how likely our outcomes are going to be in any period of time, so we can manage the business better. So, It's not uncommon for me to have a lot of conversations with our finance team to let them know what the revenues are going to be looking like week over week and in month over month. So that's how I think about technology, and there's more. Look, I could we could dive into that really deep, but where I see a gap in technology today, to your second point of the question, is that um, one of the things that I've really worked with our revenue ops team on is being able to call our shot for an entire year in advance of that year happening. So if you can think about how hard that is to look at your revenue base and what they're likely to do, and then new business that comes in and what that's likely to produce in revenue for CROs, COOs, head of sales, to be able to call your shot a year in advance of that happening is very hard. And I wrote this LinkedIn post. It wasn't the LinkedIn post that caused you to write to me, but last year we were
Mm-hmm.
within less than a percent um, off our number, and so that is very
Wow.
very close. How close we
Yeah.
got to predicting that. Now that's where the
Mm-hmm.
technology is not there today. That was all a manual effort, and us looking at what our pipeline was for the out year, what our conversion ratio is in deals that we bring in, how long deals take to close within a quarter, how many deals come in and how many deals close within the quarter, how long it takes for that revenue to hit the business. So there is like a cascade of numbers that we need to put together in formulas and spreadsheets that then feed our revenue output that we give to the business that tells them where we're going to end
Mm-hmm.
up at the end of the year. And now, by the way, I think that over time, sales technology will be able to do that, but the CROs and the head of revenue ops need to be able to know how those calculations work to give that to the technology and in order for all those formulas and algorithms to work correctly. But this is an area that, if I was back in my entrepreneurial days, I'd probably be talking to software, trying to build a company to build this type of software, because I do think this is going to be an area and AI is helping a lot in this. A lot of the activity management things, tools that are out there that are looking at calls and emails and LinkedIn requests. I think this is something that will be on the horizon for the future and make all CROs' jobs easier going forward.
So, just a couple of thoughts. Number one, I have a solution that I'll mention offline that you might want to check out. You may have heard of them, but I won't name them here. But they call themselves the Ways for Sales. I actually interviewed the founder on my podcasts. I don't even know, many episodes ago. So just that's another thing. What I'm hearing though is from a problem solving perspective is that right now that doesn't exist, right? In your mind, it doesn't exist. And so there are many, the tech stack that you just alluded to, that you manually sort of cobble together the best way that you can to come up with less than 1% off of the forecast for the year, right? Which I think a lot of people will take that and be like, yeah, that's fantastic. I'll have
Right.
another. With the current tech stack that you have in terms of looking to improve efficiency, effectiveness, your data, do me a favor, pick one that you purchased that helped you do one. Pick a tool that you purchased, and again, it can be vendor agnostic, just in general, that you purchased that helped you do one of those three things, and walk me through your buying process, starting with kind of the way we just described it now, right? In other words, if there were a tool that existed, that would be great because then it can help us do this. And frankly, even imagine that maybe this tool exists that I just alluded to. Where does your mind go second? In other words, I want this. Now I have to go and find this tool. Where do you begin? Do you begin with your network? Do you begin with, do you go online? Do you go to G2? Just walk me through where you first start your journey.
Yeah. Okay. Um, it, for me, it doesn't happen quite like that.
Okay.
I don't recognize a need and then go out and buy it, because in general, I keep up with a lot of the sales stack tools that are out there. And, things that I use to keep up on these things are like G2 Crowd and Capterra and others, as well as I have a lot of peers that I talk to in the industry that we just kind of talk about what's going on out there. And to be fair with you, a lot of the solicitation into our business about sales technology never hits me. It always
Mm-hmm.
starts at like revenue ops or someone below me. So I'm not getting, unlike many other people, I'm not getting the inbound as much. And I think it may be my title being COO. People may not think that I'm the head of the commercial team, which is fine. I'm not asking to be pummeled with calls and things like this. It is interesting.
I think that'll change
I
after this
mean,
episode, for the
yeah,
record. But yeah, okay.
maybe. But let me start with how we think about it and what we do, and I think that may help some of the people that sell sales technology in their approach. So
Mm-hmm.
there is one thing that we do every year, and by the way, I think we're doing it now more quarterly. But every year we step back from our sales technology and we audit it, and we say, what is our spend? What do we need? And how much of our existing spend are we actually using? And can we point to a technology that has made a difference in our business? Like, was the business proposition that we were sold on it or that we believed was going to happen? Did it actually happen? And unfortunately, a lot of times it doesn't. It doesn't play out the way that you think that it would be, that it would. And or it's hard to get salespeople to use a ton of different technology. So this year, for example, we're going deeper with fewer technology companies to try to scale out more of their functionality into us. So one tip I would give um, to anyone who sells sales technology is don't assume that your customer knows where your product is today. That is a huge mistake. Most people that are buying technology have a view of what it is that you do, and they're locked in that view until they learn otherwise. And part of your job is to make sure that they learned otherwise. Luckily for me, I know a lot of the CEOs of technology companies because I once ran a sales technology company, and they're friends of mine, and so they keep me in the loop on it. But this year, for example, we're talking to one vendor about three technologies that we're using today and additional functionality that their tool has to pull all that together under one roof. And last year, we would not be able to do that with that vendor. And if I hadn't kept up a relationship with the CEO there, and if my team hadn't kept up a relationship with our account manager there, we would likely have renewed with three different vendors and not be going deep with one vendor to get these three things. And then once that happens, um, I don't typically get into the weeds as it relates to sitting down with vendors, going through demos, doing all of those things. What I do is try to manage the technology process and say, look, here are the areas that I think we need to have technology deployed. Go out, talk to the vendors, look at G2 Crowd, look at these other things, come back with your recommendations, and let's talk about it. Um, and that's kind of how we look at making decisions on it. And this year we probably made more changes in our. We'll likely make more changes in our technology stack than we've had in maybe the last 3 or 4 years because of some of the changes that our vendors are doing within their own technology.
Let me come to the recommendation part. So you're not, to your point, in the weeds as they are vetting different vendors and evaluating them through the demo and all that, but they are, let's say, the head of sales or head of enablement or whomever are coming to you and saying, like, here are our top two or here are our top three. So what role are you playing at that point? In other words, are you Yeah, what role are you playing at the what's the conversation like at that level between between you and
Yeah.
them?
Yeah. So the first question I ask them is, what is this technology doing for us? Is it making, are we better at sales? Are we better at supporting our clients than we were before? And if not, why? And so that's the first
Mm-hmm.
question because I think a lot of people get excited about what sales technology can do. I think there's a lot of stats that says, hey, if you use this, it's going to increase this by 4%, 10%, et cetera, et cetera. But I want to see our numbers around what this has actually done. And by the way, if they can't prove that it has made our business better, then I question why do we need this in the first place? So that's the first thing is it delivering the business value that we need in the company? Then the second thing is, how much have we bought of it? And what is the usage that we have across whatever we purchase? So if we spent, say we have 100 licenses of something, how many people are active users in that? What is the difference between the active users and the non-active users? Why do we have non-active users, et cetera? So I dig in deeply on this. I would rather have one tool that 100% of our team uses all the time than 10 tools where we have, pieces of it being used. And I see that a lot where people buy this technology and it just sits there for a lot of the team and they don't extract the value out of it. So the big thing that I ask our team, and I shouldn't say they probably, I know that they work with our vendors on, is show me as we roll out this technology how you're going to ensure that what we think is going to happen actually happens, and I can show Sean and Sean Burke can show my leadership team that it actually occurred. Because if I can't do that, then it will not stay in the business. And then once we're through all that, we usually have it down to, a few different groups that we will work with. And then sometimes, not all the times, I like to have a personal relationship with one of the executives in the company just in case things need to get escalated or to learn from them. What I really like, if I were to give people that are in sales technology some advice, is that one thing that the CROs, or let's call it the highest ranking commercial leader, may want or should want, at least in my case, it's a definitely does want, is a relationship with an executive that will help me understand how other amazing executives are deploying their technology and running their teams for the betterment of the outcome of the business. And those are type of conversations I like to have at least on a semi-annual basis, if not quarterly, where I know, like we're in a competitive sport. I want to know what the best of the best are doing, and hopefully we're one of the
Mm-hmm.
best that they're talking about with others. So I think that may be unique, and I don't see a lot of salespeople taking that approach
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to selling to us.
So all right, so let me just dovetail on that, which is at what point? So all right, so we're at the point where the head of sales, head of enablement, head of customer success, or whoever is looking at maybe even marketing is looking at a particular technology, evaluating technology. They're coming to you. You're saying, okay, in the case that you just described, you had evaluated current technology, you've audited it, you've said, what has this done for us? What's the usage percentage? All of that. Is it making our business better? On the latter part of that, you said that, and I'm assuming if it's a new vendor, right? In other words, it's somebody who hasn't been doing business with Prometric, then it's about once they've gotten to past the evaluation stage with the heads of the groups, and they're coming to you and they're saying, "Hey, Sean, these look like a couple of good vendors that we should consider." At that point, part of your decision making process would be, or what you'd like to have is executive level alignment, where you have somebody from their executive team where you can sit down and talk and meet with them in case things need to get escalated or potentially get escalated to that person in the future. Is that right?
That is right. And it's not, when I say escalation, people may say something bad happened. That's not what
Hmm.
completely what I'm saying. I can't remember a time that I called a technology vendor with a complaint. I just don't do it.
Hmm.
I don't think of tech. I don't expect technology to be perfect. Um,
Right.
what what the relationship, the escalation that I want is knowledge of how best practices, and
Hmm.
and the one thing that executives within vendors that we work with may miss a little bit is number one, the opportunity for all of their clients to learn from each other and
Hmm.
in the right format, um, for them, given their time constraints and what they do in the company, et cetera, et cetera. So when I say
Hmm.
escalate that way, the other thing is there's a tremendous sales opportunity that a lot of these executives are missing, because when I find a technology that I love, we're owned by a private equity firm. I talk to the operating partners about how we do what we do. And I'm like, look, all of your portfolio companies, if they're not using this type of technology, they're missing out on it. So it is not uncommon for people that report to boards to show in their board reports the actual dashboards and the outcomes of the work that they do in in
Hmm.
the board format. And if those boards are private equity firms or VC firms or whomever it is, it a lot of times that question, the question will come up, is like, how are you getting these numbers, where did you get this report from, etc. And that's a great sales opportunity for the vendor who provides that dashboarding and that insights to us. So I think, it's a mutually beneficial relationship if done correctly. And by the way, I don't think this is at all a waste of time, and I don't think it's a big lift, especially when you have a commercial team of a certain size, to the vendor. If there's one or two seats, it probably doesn't make sense, but if you're buying with any
Hmm.
level of dollar amount, it would probably make sense for those leaders to do that as well.
How, at what point during the selling process, the sales process, should the account executive, presumably at this point, um, get that meeting? In other words, facilitate that meeting between the executives, in your opinion, your
Yeah.
experience.
So when it's done, not signed, but when we have said we are going to go with you, you're our vendor of choice. Now, because then you
Hmm.
flip from the decision is made, and in my mind, once the decision is made, I immediately go to how do we optimize this investment, and that's where it makes sense for me
Hmm.
to get involved, because I don't want to talk to them unless there's something that I don't know about it, or if it's a newer technology and I want to know how they're using it inside their business. That hasn't really come up so far, because I try to stay pretty close with it, but that's the only instance where I think it would come before, is if I'm unfamiliar with all the nuances of the technology that I'd want to talk to them. And usually it's like, show me how you use this. Show me how you use it on us. Like, show me, like, am I a red,
Right.
yellow, green in your forecast? Show me the buying decision team. Like, show me, and it kind of can create some uncomfortable situations, but I think it's great to see how you look inside their sales
Hmm.
technology, because then I can then think about how our clients or future clients would look inside of ours.
Right. Yep. That makes sense. Let me zoom all the way back out for a moment, because I think one of the most challenging parts of sales is getting attention, right? In other words, you alluded to the fact that you're not necessarily getting as much inbound, I guess, if you will, incoming solicitations from salespeople. It's more of your commercial leaders. But you were obviously the SVP of worldwide sales previously at Live Person. Is that right? Yep, at Live Person. And so presumably you've gotten them. I know, just even as the COO, you get them. So from your perspective, when you do get an inbound message, what resonates with you most, or in what doesn't? I guess candidly, because I think people have struggled to find the right message to differentiate themselves from all the other messages that you're getting, and they just want to know, how to be better.
Yeah. Okay. So this is something that I'm happy and somewhat displeased to say, because we have people doing outreach all the time, and
Hmm.
and a lot of it falls on deaf ears. So I'm going to be
Hmm.
very transparent on this. I have my entire email system set up with folders. The amount of email that I get, I will not manage in one inbox. It's just that it's too much. So all of our board members, all of my SMT, which is our senior leadership team, everybody has folders, and I live in folders. So what invariably happens is that my inbox is filled with solicitations across the board in email. And a lot of them just go right into my junk mail, not because of me, but because of our email system. So I would say, rough numbers, maybe half of the solicitations even get into my inbox. They're usually caught by a spam filter, etc. By the way, my
Hmm.
phone does not ring at all. It
Hmm.
is
Wow.
shocking that my phone does not ring.
Wow.
And the email solicitation or the messaging solicitations that I get from LinkedIn are not from vendors that would apply to me. It's really funny. Like, I almost wrote a LinkedIn post. Um, they're from, like, it's crazy. Like, this kind of stuff you get on LinkedIn. I get things like, I can't tell you how many people want to sell me a franchise of something. I get franchise requests like two or three times. I'm like, no, I don't want to own a franchise ever. Never, never.
Right.
Like,
Yes.
I got a day job. I'm really busy. And then there's a lot of fitness coaches out there in London for some reason, where I don't live in London. I'm like, but yeah, it's odd, the stuff that comes into me via LinkedIn. So most of the messages don't ever get to
Hmm.
me. But
Hmm.
that doesn't help anybody out. So let's just say, like, if you think your message is coming across, more than
Hmm.
often than not, it is not. So here's, if I were an SDR, if I were an AE today, I would not come directly to me until I knew, and I call this the play. Now, this is kind of old school
Okay.
sales. If you go Glenn Gary, Glenn Ross, like, don't talk unless you know where I'm heading with this thing, or else you'll mess the whole deal up. So,
Right.
what I think the best approach is, by the way, we have a large buying team, probably not as big as others. I would say, in general, for technology, um, we probably have 6 to 8 people that make those decisions. Um,
Hmm.
uh, so if I were in those roles, what I would do is gather as much data and insights from that buying team as I can, and come up with, like, this powerful impact statement that is almost delivered to me from one of those representatives. Like, a lot of people say I need to go with Sean. You don't. You can get to Sean through somebody else. And so what the and by the way, this I don't see this happening, but, like, my team's out there talking to vendors. If I were an AE, or if I was a national account manager, what I would say is to say, look, we know this decision is going to go to Sean. It's likely going to go to the CFO. It may even go to the CEO. It could even go to the board. I can't, and there's always this struggle, like, I don't want to jump over the decision, or I don't want to jump over the person I'm talking to these executives, because then I may, burn a bridge with them, and hurt the opportunity for sale. The one piece of advice I would give on that is, the sale doesn't happen if I'm not included, or if the CFO is included. So you're not going to hurt anybody. You're actually just going to spend a bunch of time with somebody who's going to, learn a lot about your technology, but they don't have the budget for it at all. And I,
Right.
if we
Right.
had time at some point, I could tell you a story of what not to do, because I've seen people do that. But I think the best way to
Yeah.
do it is to gather this all up, and then have, like, right now, most of my decisions come from my head of revenue ops. Have my head of revenue ops say, Sean, we're working with these people, with this group. Here's the value proposition we're putting together. Here's the rough budget. Here's what we're thinking about on this. I've crafted with our AE on this. We're going to bring this to you as a decision. What do you need to know about this decision? to help me do this, and they include the AE in that. But I guarantee you, the
Hmm.
AE that came from my head of revenue ops. That didn't come from the AE saying, "Hey, look, can we work together to craft this story inside of your business to sell that all the way
Hmm.
through?" Because you've got to sell me, then you've likely got to sell the CFO, possibly, and then maybe even the CEO. Um, and
Hmm.
so the AE's responsibility is to make sure that the unique story for each of those decision makers is crafted and delivered to them. So when the paperwork comes through and the DocuSign comes through, they have that implanted in their mind and like, okay, this is a foregone conclusion. I'm just gonna sign it. And what I find is, in lieu of that, the contract takes way longer because people are like, what is this tool? What does this do? What is the impact? Whatever it is. And it just prolongates the sales process unnecessarily if you don't do it, ahead of it. So that would be my recommendation.
Yeah, as you're saying, work with if it's an AE, work with, in this case, maybe you can call that person the head of revenue, the champion, to architect and to craft a story, if you will, compelling story, so that by the time it gets to your desk and the CFO's desk, that it's wrapped up in a nice bow. Here it is. Everybody is on the same page, right? The AE, head of revenue, and any other stakeholders that are involved, and that makes it easier for you to say yes, so it doesn't stay on your desk long, where you're going to be asking questions that nobody really wants you to start asking questions about. Is that
Yeah,
right?
yeah, that's right. And we actually have a deck that we use on all of our technology that describes what is the technology, what is the use case, how much do we spend on it, what do we think the return on is. So like this audit we do has all that packaged neat and
Mm-hmm.
clear. In case anybody in the company ever asks me, why do you do what you do? I'm like, here's the deck. You can see it. It's already tightened up and done.
Right.
By the way, to our previous conversation, this is the time. It wouldn't hurt to have the CEO or the highest ranking official that will do it included in that email from the vendors as an introduction at that time. Hey, if you have any bigger questions on this, here's my CEO, here's my CRO, whatever it is. This would be a good time for you guys to talk as well.
Got it. All right. Let me just press back on, or continue to push you on, I guess, an answer for if I'm a SDR or if I'm an accounts executive and I'm sending an email that actually hits your inbox. And let's say, for instance, it's LinkedIn InMail, who hopefully it doesn't go to junk. In that case, it hits somewhere in your LinkedIn messaging folder somewhere. And let's say, for instance, you're the SVP of worldwide sales, right? And so you're getting these messages more frequently. How can people stand out? One of the things I just heard you say is don't stop sending email, pick up the phone and call. Maybe that's it. And if that is it, what do you need to hear, either written or verbally, to again get your attention and to differentiate what you've heard from everybody else?
Uh, I don't think there's a silver bullet answer to this. It's very
Mm-hmm.
situational. Um, and I'm trying to think back of an outreach to me that was extremely effective. Um,
Mm-hmm.
um,
And even because you're right. I mean, obviously there is no silver bullet, and one of the things I always tell people that listen to this podcast is to take the aggregate of the information that you're hearing to make the best decision, going forward, right? And so for you, is it do people need to show you up front that they've done their homework? Should it be longer? Should it be like, what kind of detail should it include? Should it, you know what I mean? Like, just as people are struggling to craft messages that are meaningful so that they don't sound templated, because I think that's what people default back to, right? It's like, okay, I'm just going to load up 1,000 emails and I'm just going to send them out, and then hopefully Sean Burke responds, right? As opposed to really stopping and thinking, because I feel like, well, if I stop and think, it's just going to be a waste of time anyways, you know?
yeah, yeah. I have to say there. I'm going back through um, some of the things. So I could tell you in general that
Mm-hmm.
the people who understand what our unique commercial challenges are today, they like they respect and understand our current spend in that area, and there's an angle, a niche, a learning, a contact, a um, approach that they are unequivocally knowledgeable that I do not have, that could work. And that's a tough ask.
Yeah. Yeah.
But let me tell you, let me tell you a few things that I think could impact their odds. And I talk about this with our own team. Um, I hear some people say, "Show me you know me." I don't care if somebody knows me. I don't care if they know where I went to college or my past history or whatever. Um,
Hmm.
that really isn't that's not in what I care about. Is how do I do the best work for my company and for everybody that reports to me. And so it's
Hmm.
but that's where my mind is always. Like that's why I sleep well at night, but like that's where my mind is always going. But there are a few things
Hmm.
that I think really create separation, and on our we ask our team to do it. Is I would I would tell every single person to experience our business before they talk to us. So, like, for example, we're in the assessment industry. Every one of our new logo people are asked to take the assessment of our future client work. And some of these assessments are 9 hours long. 9 hours long. And I'm like, if you don't know what
Wow.
their experience is, if you haven't felt what their client feels, then how in the world are you ever going to help them and be legitimate with them? And when they do that and
Hmm.
they're like, I experienced this, here's how we could do it better. All of a sudden, they are a real life customer. By the way, they've given you money. They've given you money,
Hmm.
and they can talk firsthand as, hey, I just was, like, for example, if they were doing it, I just was in your test center in Tampa, Florida, where I live. I took this test. I got checked in this way. Like, here are 5 things that I think from an experience standpoint that you killed, and here are 5 things that I think you could do better. And by the way, if you want to know one thing, and by the way, I would keep it really small. One thing that I think our technology could help you with in this experience, that would probably cut through the noise, because it's so few people will go to that length to do it.
Hmm.
And it helps me learn about my own business, which is something I'm trying to do all the time. So that would be one tip that I would give. Um, and by the way, I shouldn't say that. I do give that. I tell all of our new logo team to go out and take the assessment of the clients that we're going out, and talk to them about it.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's fantastic advice. Show that you are unequivocally knowledgeable about something that ultimately can help them in their business and do their job better. And obviously, to your point, if they can experience something from an end user perspective that the customer is obviously selling or doing within their own purview, then you do have unequivocal knowledge because you have personal knowledge that you're sharing directly with them, and then also offer up a solution, not just say, not just mention it.
One I missed the point. So that I think this is a critical point. Is a lot of SDRs think
Hmm.
that they need to get to me. They shouldn't. They
Hmm.
should get their executive to get to me. They'll get a much higher hit
Hmm.
rate. So that's the other thing. Is I prospect. If I have somebody in
Hmm.
a deal, they're like, look, I can't get into the COO. Let me go get into the COO. Let's work on how I help you get into it, because it takes a team approach
Yep.
on the sales side. So sorry I missed that one.
Yep.
But yeah, that works.
Yeah.
That will exponentially increase their ability to be successful. Like if I'm an SDR, like I will sit with our SDRs and listen to their pitches and just say that wouldn't
Hmm.
work, that wouldn't work, that wouldn't work. That's good. Work on that.
Hmm.
Things like that. But I think the best way for them,
Right.
especially the higher up you go, get your executives to connect with them, versus you trying
Yeah.
to do it yourself.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that you said too. When you said angle, a new learning, new contact. I mean, that is a new angle right
Yeah.
there. If you're an SDR and you have a strategic person that you're trying to get to on a lead, and you know that that person is the right person, and you have, frankly, the solution for them. And it's like, Sean, can you help me here? Can you reach out to this person, or something like that, right? So that's really good advice too, for sure. We're over our stated time here. For a few minutes. How much do you have to jump off for the next five, or can I extend it for another
Yeah, yeah,
five?
sure. We can extend.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, I want to be respectful of your
Yeah.
time, but for those of you who are listening here, we had some audio challenges, so we started off a little bit later here, and here we are, 45 minutes into this, and I still have a couple of more questions here, just that have come up as we're having this conversation. Sales methodology and sales motion. What are you using there at Prometric, or do you have one particular?
No. So we look, I've studied them all back in the days when Spin was there, Miller Hyman Blue Sheets, the Challenger sale.
Hmm.
There's Medic,
Hmm.
MedPick, all of those different things. I would say that we don't subscribe to a methodology exactly, and the reason why we don't is that there's an assumption that I never want to take, is that we know how buyers buy, and therefore we can prescribe a process to them that works for them. I think that's a dangerous mistake, especially when things move so much. Like the way people buy now, or the way the companies buy now, is so different than it was 5 years ago that we would literally be doing the wrong things if we subscribe to a specific methodology. So let me tell you how we think about sales and
Hmm.
being great at sales. So first thing that we do is we do win losses on all of our sales, and we push really hard on our losses. It for me, one of the best things you can learn from is why you lose a deal, and we love our lost prospect deals that will talk to us about how we were good and how we were bad and how we can learn. Um, I'm just so appreciative of people who will tell us honestly where we were good and where we were bad at. And so we use that to inform how we sell. The other thing we do
Hmm.
is when a sale has gone to complete, now we don't do this for every sale, is we try to talk to the buyer and get them to tell us what was going on in their business as we were going through our process so we could see inside of their camp and then readjust it. So I don't think of us like the way we look at a sales process is set it and forget it. We're literally every single quarter look, I mean, every single deal, because our deals are so high of value, we're looking at every ounce of effort that we put in to get better at what we do. And so I don't subscribe to a methodology. What I will say to you is the more data and the better we can get at working with buyers on how they make decisions. And the other thing is we also get our past buyers to work with our future buyers and helping them go through the process so they could avoid some of the pitfalls that we saw in our process.
That's fantastic, getting past buyers to work with future buyers. I don't think I've heard anybody say that yet in all of my interviews, online and offline. So that's certainly there's unequivocal knowledge that I have right there that I don't think a lot of people have, that you just that you just shared with me, that I can use moving forward. So
Yeah.
cool. Thank you for that. I want to just follow up on something you said earlier, which is you said there are 6 to 8 people that are on your decision board, so to speak, your decision making folks. Who are they? Like, what roles do they play within your organization?
Yeah. So um, so I have a budget every year. I manage to my budget. And if there's any purchase that's outside of the norm of my budget or what I put in, then there'll likely be a financial person involved, as well as we have a
Hmm.
procurement team that runs the nuances of deals. Like we got to have a PO, we got to have, statement of work, things like that. Um, and so when I look at our team, there's and that procurement group works with our legal team and et cetera. So let's just say there's the procurement process group. Then there's me, who kind of is like the final, like yes or no. Then we have
Hmm.
1 to 3 people on our revenue ops team that are involved. Then we have the actual sales leadership that's involved. And I require in every one of our purchases the users of the product to give a yay or nay, because I don't want to assume that what we would buy is good for the user. If my sales team is not excited about the technology, then there's no sense in us buying it because they're not going to use it. So I think of it more in groups than like 6 to 8 people. I think of, if the salespeople love it and they're excited about it and they're pushing me to do it, that's a great sign. If they're kind of like, yeah, then nah. And then the revenue ops, they tell us like, does it fit? Is it worth the money? Blah blah blah. Then me, finance and legal are kind of the group that goes through it.
Got it. That's fantastic. Super helpful. Okay, so I'm going to do a quick abbreviated version, I guess, of Rapid Fire 5, where whether it's the Goats of Growth podcast or customer conversations, I ask 5 questions. You give me 5 answers. However, a couple of the questions that are in this particular Rapid 5 that I'm preparing for you have already been answered. We talked about email and if you're responsive, what kind of emails you're responsive to. We just talked about that in terms of a certain angle or showing unequivocal knowledge about something that's going to help you in your business. That's fantastic. Um, are you more responsive to cold emails or cold calls? Well, actually, let me just get that from you. I mean, obviously, you said your phone doesn't ring. You live in folders for your email. But if I were an SDR or an AE trying to reach out to Sean Burke, where do I find the highest? Where will I get the highest probability of reaching
Yeah,
you?
I'd have one of your executive team reach out to me on LinkedIn all day long.
Awesome. I love that. That's a huge tip. Okay. Um, is there a time of day or day in general that you're more inclined to be responsive to that kind of a message?
Only weekends. Most executives are slammed all week.
Awesome. How do you typically learn about new technology? Uh, and I know you mentioned your peer groups initially. Tell me about when you're looking for something new. Where do you begin?
I typically go out to like G2 Crowd and some others. Like I read a lot. Um, I there's no one thing, but um, I go out there and I look, or I do. I mean, to be honest, like Google. Like I will just type in a problem that I have into Google and see if there's a technology to solve it. So uh, that's it. But I'm maybe a little bit unique in that because I stay pretty close to a lot of the sales technology companies. So, but that's it.
Hmm.
Probably just like everybody else.
Awesome. Which tool in your tech stack would you be most upset about if you suddenly lost access to it?
Well, I consider my calendar, email, that is where I do most of my work. And a lot of people don't think that that's part of your sales tech stack, and they're completely wrong. Um, my calendar is the most important thing. It's how I make investments in our business. If I lost my calendar, and people who work with me know it, that's it. It would be lights out for me.
No
Yeah.
mas.
By
All
the way,
right.
there's
All
there's
right.
a subtlety.
All right. Here's a
There's a
whack.
sales subtlety in that your smart reps will get, because if they're never on your calendar or they're never in where you live, they're missing everything. Do you know what I mean? Like you got to be, yeah. So, anyways, that I just want to make sure that they see that.
Well, no, let's actually double down on that. Tell me what do you mean? Do you mean if you're a sales leader and your reps aren't on your calendar, or on you're a sales leader and your reps aren't on your own internal calendar? You're saying reps aren't on somebody's external
Oh,
calendar.
Time is the
Sorry.
asset
uh,
Mm-hmm.
of everything, like of business, of the, and if you're not in people's time and engaged with them or whatever, with the
Got
amount
it.
of pressures that are going on in the world, then you don't. I don't want it to sound like harsh, but you don't exist in their like getting being in somebody's brain is a valuable asset, and it's hard to get in there.
Yes.
So if you can get in, God love you. I mean, you'll be making millions and millions of dollars. Like money will not be an issue if you're able to get in somebody else's mind. And the higher up you can get in an organization, getting mind share with people may be the most important skill that anybody could learn, especially if you're in sales.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I love it. I love it. Okay, here's a little bit of a quirky one, only for customer conversations. The customer conversations angle, because for me, I feel like I don't know if it's called mandate or remit or my mission, I guess if you will, for this kind of episode is to help people get what you just said, right, on people's calendars, right? And the easiest way, or at least one of the ways to do that, is to figure out a way to differentiate themselves and to have unequivocal knowledge that you just mentioned before, right? So here is something that I'm going to ask you that only people that are listening to customer conversations will actually know. Okay, so here we go, because you're going to tell me the answer. Name an animal, again, that only people listening to this episode could reference it when they reached out to you, so that you know that they actually heard you on customer conversations. What would that animal be?
uh,
Okay, let me make sure I understood it. Nate, I'm going to just say an animal, and anyone who hears this, if they want to reach
Yes,
out to me, is going to say the animal's name. Okay, I'll go eagle. I'll go
exactly.
eagle. That's my spirit animal.
Eagle.
Spirit
Okay.
eagle.
Fantastic. Okay, yes, that's exactly
Okay.
that's exactly what I mean. It sounds
No,
quirky.
that's okay.
This is a work in product, work in progress, Sean. So you're gonna have to
No
bear with me.
problem. Hey, I've never been asked that question before, so good for you.
There you go. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Well, listen, everybody. Actually, Sean, one other thing. Just tell us if people want to reach out to you candidly, just to say thank you, follow up with a certain question. Maybe even they want to come work for Prometric or become a customer for that matter. What's the best way for people to reach out to you and say
yeah,
thank you?
LinkedIn.
Always the best.
Sean Burke, Sean Burke, Bruke. It will be in the show notes. Sean Burke, COO of Prometric. Thank you for doing customer
Thank
conversations.
you, Jay.
Goodbye, everybody. Don't forget to, well, I guess you're already subscribed if you listen to this. Okay, goodbye, everybody.